Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, friends of the Bruno Kreisky Forum. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome you here this evening, to welcome novelist and journalist Mohammed Hanif and moderator and curator Tobias Matern. Welcome. For the Bruno Kreisky Forum, the hotspot South Asia, as we call it, and not only because it's an area, a region we might very often perceive as a region rather of conflicts. No, it's also a hotspot because it's a region of great cultural and of course also other potentials. So the hotspot is really meant in a very, very broad sense, and this is what is also necessary, I think, to bring into the city, into Vienna, as a city of international organizations, bring this knowledge and new perspectives by writers and engage people here into Vienna and into Austria. This is what we like to achieve with Hotspot South Asia, curated by Tobias Matern. And we also understand, of course, that this topic, which is not so frequently dealt with in the city, as I believe, for this we need to reach out. And I'm particularly happy to see so many among you who are from the international community and who show great interest into Pakistan, into this area. And I would like to, first of all, extend my special thanks to the ambassador of Pakistan, who has not arrived yet, I believe. And secondly, my special thanks to Ambassador Brigitte Blaha from the Pakistani Austrian Society. Thank you so very much. It's very important and to have this network, to be able to draw upon this network. And this is a thanks very much. I basically would like to wish you an interesting, for sure interesting evening with our guest, and hope that you find new insights into this area about Pakistan, about its regional dimensions, and also what we and also what we actually could do to bring many of these perspectives stronger and more frequently into our discourse, so to speak. Once again, welcome. Enjoy the evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sabine. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us tonight. I'm Tobias Matern, your host of the Hotspot South Asia talking format that I'm really proud and happy that the Kreisky Forum is doing that. We started with a couple of Afghanistan evenings, and tonight we will be zooming into Pakistan. And I'm really proud and honored to have such a distinguished guest with us, Mr. Mohammed Hanif. Welcome on stage. Pakistan is a country that has little attention in the West since the disastrous withdrawal from neighboring Afghanistan. Pakistan has been labeled many times as the most dangerous country in the world, but is usually only focused upon when a crisis is in the making or is happening. We've seen that recently. The attention was briefly back. The several decades-old conflict between India and Pakistan over Kashmir turned into a short but very intense armed conflict after a massacre on Indian tourists which killed 26 people and for which the Indians blamed Pakistani terrorists. And that incident, that horrific incident, started a tit-for-tat from both armies. And of course, two nuclear-armed states, that is something that the international community should be worried about and probably should also be worried about in times of when the crisis is not as hot as it was. We've seen in this conflict the dire consequences that those two armies can inflict on each other. By the time the ceasefire was announced interestingly enough, by US President Donald Trump, on May 10, 70 people had been killed Those are the official numbers as reported in the international news media, 50 on the Pakistani side and at least 20 on the Indian side. It's possible that the numbers are higher, it's possible that the numbers are lower, but I guess it gives us a good estimate of what was happening. As I said, President Trump claimed that he had mediated in the conflict and sort of showed that the US is still, despite the language, the rhetoric that is being used in Washington, capable of acting as a world's policeman. And I think in this instance, it was quite necessary and important that Washington stepped in. Ever since, the conflict has been frozen again, but it is far from being solved. And this will be, of course, one of the things that we will be talking about tonight with our guest. Mr. Mohammed Hanif was born in Pakistan in 1965. He comes from the Punjabi province, a city called Okara, which is in the rural part of Pakistan. He grew up in a farmer's family, and actually his first career pursuit was not to become a writer, but to work for the Pakistani Air Force. He told me once that he did that after falling for a Top Gun-style advertisement in the newspaper, that he joined the Air Force for some time, and he was trained to be a fighter pilot. And we can also see that in his novels, where there is quite some fascination for military, for pilots, for these things, and very intense descriptions of that. He quit that adventure, which I would say is good, because otherwise the world wouldn't have become literally a book which I consider a masterpiece. His most famous novel, A Case of Exploding Mangoes, a political satire on the unsolved explosion of a plane that carried the infamous or famous Pakistani military dictator Zia ul-Haq, and also an American ambassador. He is, both in his books and also in his journalistic work, a remarkable observer and uses fiction, I would say, with a specific type of dark humor to describe reality even better than journalists sometimes can do it, specifically in countries like Pakistan, where the powerful are calling the shots, and it is sometimes really difficult to decipher what is really going on. So he analyzes Pakistani politics for the BBC, writes commentary pieces for British and American newspapers, and once again, please give a warm welcome to Mr. Mohammed Hanif. Yeah, we've met a couple of times for journalistic interviews. In one of those interviews, you gave me this quote, a quote that journalists really like, because it summarizes so much, or it tells so much about a society. And the quote goes, "In Pakistan, the tap water should contain anti-depressants so that people don't lose their minds." Can you please take us a little bit into Pakistani society and what you mean by that?
Thank you, Tobias. Thank you, Sabine, and thank you for that kind introduction. I was trying to remember, when did I actually say that? I think we might have met in Karachi, yeah?
It was in Karachi.
It was in Karachi, yeah. So I think the obvious thing is I must have been depressed. But since I'm in a city which is kind of, known for Freud, so I shouldn't use that word lightly. I was in Karachi, and I think the context was that I was living a fairly middle-class life. I lived in a sort of a so-called posh area, and I had a house which some people would call a small mansion. But the problem there was that there was no running water, and the whole area had no running water. So I had to buy my water, I still have to buy my water, from basically a bootlegger. Mm-hmm. That's somebody who steals water and then brings a tanker to my house and that could happen at 3 a.m. in the morning, because, you know, like bootleggers, they have their own timings and they set their own prices. And it wasn't just me, it's like the whole kind of community. It was, so you were basically living in a, what I would call like a posh slum, that you have like, you know, sort of big houses, and some people even had swimming pools. And we have at least 2 golf courses now in the area, but no running water. So I think that can be depressing, that when you kind of made a life for yourself and you still are dependent on kind of for basic things like water. And why I said that we should have antidepressants because I was depressed because of lack of water, and then I thought when you're deprived of things, then you dream of those things. So I always dreamed of kind of running water in my taps, and what could be nicer if there was water, it would make me happy, and if there was a little bit of a substance, that would make me even happier. So I still stand by that statement that yes, our water should come with something that will make us happy, because apparently water on its own doesn't make us happy. And since then, I've traveled kind of in Europe and in other countries where you have running water and you can drink it from the tap, but apparently it's not enough, because all the supermarkets you see are full of water. And I've recently seen something called smart water, and when you have like, you know, sort of all these varieties of water, which is basically just water kind of packaged too. So yeah, sometimes I find those things a bit distressing. And I say, when a journalist turns up, they want some quotable quotes, and I just give them, because it's for free. It doesn't cost me anything.
Thanks for that. that makes you such a special guy to talk about. But I also think you went beyond yourself. I think you have more than just yourself, or had more than just yourself in mind. I think you were also talking about the people, your fellow countrymen, especially the ones who do not belong to the middle class, who face hardships in terms of economy, who are threatened in their daily life by the extremists, the extremists who challenge the state. So I think those were also issues that you were touching upon.
Yeah, I think in my own lifetime I've seen, as you mentioned, that I grew up like in a rural community, and there was poverty, but it was a different kind of poverty. If you were a landless peasant, for example, it was almost guaranteed that you will get food, that, you know, sort of the village will somehow take care of providing you, like, you know, sort of the basics. And then you've had like such rapid urbanizations, the agricultural lands and those modes of production have disappeared. And like myself, I think majority of the country, people of our country, they kind of were born in a different kind of economy and have ended up in their own lifetime in what is called urban poverty, which is a very, very cruel form of, way cruel than rural poverty is. Rural poverty can also be very, very cruel, but at least there is a semblance of a community. You can just walk into somebody's farm and you can, you know, take some vegetables, and it's all right, it's accepted. It is expected that, you know, sort of that nobody should go hungry. Whereas when you end up in these big cities where you don't know who your next door neighbor is, and you don't know if they've eaten at night or not. So I think those are the kind of concerns which I was talking about, and which are kind of getting, I think, slightly worse. I mean, I think for last decade or so, probably it's been around longer than that. They've defined something called poverty line now that they kind of measure societies. So this year's poverty line kind of says that 45% of Pakistanis are below the poverty line. And below the poverty line, there's another poverty line. It's called extreme poverty. So 16.5% people are under that extreme poverty line. So in my lifetime, it's seen that, you had a chance at upward mobility. That if somehow your parents sent you to a school, and if you worked hard, or if you were if you had that gift, maybe one out of every class will at least be able to transcend their class, their circumstances, but now I think the only chance that people are promised is that if they work really hard, and when I say work really hard, I mean work 14 hours, 7 days a week, then you might go from being extremely poor to poor.
Yeah.
So I think those kind of things are things that not really talked about much in our kind of national discourse, or whenever you end up talking to international media. Those are the kind of things which are just overlooked, that, oh, this is how it's always been, and this is how it's always going to be. Yeah.
So take us into this discourse that is not happening. How should it happen? What should be within that? I hear it should be more about justice, it should be more about how to get people out of poverty, but what are the other aspects that you would want to be discussed about?
I was born there. I've spent most of my life there. I'm I write. I have a niche audience, but I still have. If I knew how to fix it, I would have done it by now. I wouldn't be sitting here. I think it's a, what do you call it here? Elite capture. There's a cabal of people who own the country, basically, and we've got these millions and very hard, basically making you rich, and those people are not going to give up their privilege without a struggle, without a fight. So that's what has been happening. Political parties are very weak. When we were growing up, they used to have a political slogan called Roti, Kapda aur Makan, which is like bread, housing, and clothing. That should be basic right for everybody. Now, not even mainstream political parties talk about that. So we have had quite a backslide in terms of our democratic struggles, I think.
You were mentioning the ones who struggle within this system, but you were also hinting at the ones who are benefiting from the system. And when we come to the opening remarks I made about Kashmir, I found an interesting news story today. The Pakistani government just announced that the defense budget will be increased by 20%, despite of the economic hardships, despite of the economic oversight by the International Monetary Fund that is quite tough on Pakistan, actually. So is one of the most driving factors for the conflict in Kashmir that the establishment, as the military is often called, benefits from it? Or?
Yeah, it's both in India and Pakistan, it's their bread and butter for the ruling classes. And in Pakistan, the army historically has had more share in power. Mm-hmm. So it's basically their bread and butter. Tomorrow, if this thing disappears, what we call Kashmir dispute, so-called, then why do we basically need such huge armies? Why do we need these state-of-the-art weapons? Because basically we are either using them against India or against our own people. And India is doing exactly the same thing, that they're using them either against Pakistan or against their own people. And I think you should look at the language that is used both in India and Pakistan to describe Kashmir. As Pakistan calls it, it's juggler's vein, sharab. It's like our juggler's vein. Like we cannot live without it. We can't let it go. And India calls it, it's what is called like, a body part which is kind of which you have to have, that you cannot, it's like a limb that you cannot just get rid of, you can't let go of. And would you actually inflict so many wounds so persistently on your own body for such a long time? You won't. India's got like, I don't know, 700,000 soldiers there. Pakistan has had like, sort of built up this whole army, this whole jihadi infrastructure, which they say now they've disbanded for, to do what? And has anybody actually ever bothered asking Kashmiris what they want? No, never. They would never do that. So I have Kashmiri friends who kind of, sort of basically say, please, can we just be left alone? Right. Can you take your fight somewhere else? Can we just get on with our lives? So this is like the biggest lie that both India and Pakistan have told their people and have been managed to sell it, that, if we let go of Kashmir, then we are not complete. Somehow we kind of lose the very purpose of our existence. Whereas I've lived in Pakistan, I've traveled through India, most Indians won't even know where Kashmir is. Most Pakistanis don't care what Kashmiris do or what they want. They've got their own problems. So it's like the ruling classes in both the countries that, sort of when you want a big distraction, what do? You go to war or sort of start saber rattling. And suddenly, India and Pakistan, they're both kind of very, very divided nations at this moment. And as soon as you say, oh, we are going to war, suddenly you have this appearance that the whole nation is united. People who weren't talking to each other, people who are like, at each other's throats, then suddenly you have like this, oh, we are at war. And Pakistani army will save us, and Indian politicians, rulers, Modi, their army, they will save us. So I think that's the biggest lie that's been sold on both sides of the border, and it is sadly still selling.
If the Kashmiris would have it their way, would they, from your perspective, you mentioned Kashmiri friends, go for independence?
I think forget independence. They will say, leave us alone. Like, just go back to whatever you're doing, take your dispute somewhere else. Let us get on with our lives. It is like the most militarized region in the world, and has been like for decades and decades and decades. So forget independence. Yes, there are people who talk about independence. They probably want independence, but they're not even going that far. They're just saying, like, just leave us alone. We have our lives. We have, like, sort of our children to educate. Why can't we live like everybody else? I think that's what they want.
How is it for you as an observer if you take a critical, analytical stance during a time of crisis? You were mentioning the patriotism that is being stirred up during conflicts like that, but guys like you speak out and are using critical observations. Does that put you in trouble?
Whenever there was in trouble, let's not talk about my troubles. Let's stick to India-Pakistan trouble. Yeah. I think no. What happens is, I think what was strange during this conflict was that we've had like 4 or 5 wars, and we're always like on the verge of going to war, or we had like. So there always used to be a small group of people in India side, Pakistan side. People would make fun of them, that they like, just go and do candlelight vigils, and they kind of keep reminding that, well, we managed to live together for 1,000 years. Why can't we go back to like those times? And but this time, like, I did not hear any such voices. Even the sort of the lunatic peacemonger. They had to shut up. So things have gotten slightly slightly worse. You also, as I said, you had like a small group of people who kind of, gather on the border from both sides, and they'll kind of, make peace signs or do candlelights and kind of, sing songs together. Even that is not possible. And you would imagine that after 76, 77 years, sort of the generation that went through partition, most of them are gone. Here's like a new generation which have never actually have had those memories. So they would, sort of tend to get on with their lives. But no, that hasn't happened.
And why do you feel, has it become so polarized? I mean, why is it not possible even for the resilient peace people on both sides to speak up at situations like that?
Because it doesn't sell. I mean, the language of peace is like so kind of, sort of, it doesn't do anything to you emotionally. Like, so when you say, oh, we should have peace, like nobody says, oh, yeah, we should have peace. And you say, oh, let's go to war, let's kill some Hindus, or let's go get some Pakistanis. That's what gets people, and that's what governments on the both sides have been able to sell to their people. And there are not very many people who kind of remind them of the cost or of the possibilities of peace that can benefit people. There are not very many voices. India, we used to see that they had like a political continuity. They've had democracy. So, okay, they would be, but they and Pakistan was like on this other ideological track. But India has kind of last 15, 20 years, they say, oh, it's like, so when you see your neighbor going nut, you say, oh, you think you're nut? I'll show you what nut is. So India is kind of caught up, and very fast they've caught up, and they've kind of, there are 1.5 billion of them. So I have no idea like what you're going to do about that.
We've seen the American administration, who is usually sending signals of like staying out of international conflicts, of really getting into this one, even though the Indian government is saying, no, this is a bilateral issue. The Americans did not call an end to this, but I think there are clear signs and signals that the Trump administration did step in. Is the US in South Asia still acting as policemen? And part two of the question, is that good for South Asia?
I think they're not signs and signals. Trump has been kind of saying it every other day that I stopped the war, I stopped the war. And now I think, and India is saying, no, he didn't stop the war, we stopped the war. Pakistan is saying, no, he did tell India to stop the war, and they did. So we don't know, but I think now people are kind of saying that, okay, maybe India and Pakistan should mediate between him and Elon Musk and kind of stop them from fighting, or kind of send some peacekeepers to LA and see if we can help out. So I don't really know. Does anybody know what kind of Trump will do tomorrow? So I have I will not go there. I don't know much about his kind of how his mind.
It's journalistically, it's a very tough and difficult terrain. But I think there, the author, the novelist, would have much more liberty in describing what is going on.
You can't write a novel about Trump. Come on, he's like he's a walking, talking, like sort of a novel mega kind of sort of a film himself. I would not like I don't think any novelist can have the kind of imagination of what we are witnessing these days. I think they would like to be the policeman. I don't think India thinks that India is too big to kind of admit that they will listen to Trump. But he has kind of his mood swings, I guess. And
maybe we should not devote too much of our precious time to Mr. Trump. Let's go back to the Pakistani people and a little bit to the Pakistani soul. We are focusing very much on crises, on the problems, but what I find extremely remarkable every time that I visit Pakistan is the resilience, is the openness of people, the willingness to share lives, stories, a cup of tea, despite all the problems, despite all the pressures that the Pakistani society offers to its people. What would you say, where does this resilience actually stem from?
I don't know what kind of Pakistanis have you been hanging out with.
Not only you,
mostly,
so others as well.
Mostly they'll start pouring whiskey like before the sun sets. I don't know who's been giving you tea.
Really?
I don't know who's been giving you tea. People keep saying that these are resilient people, and I mean, sometimes it's not really a choice. Like I used to live in Karachi, for example, for a very long time, and someday there would be riots and city would like shut down. And doesn't matter what the scale of the threat was. 1.5 days later, people will start trickling out. 2 days later, you'll see traffic is back on the roads. And the threat still might be looming. So you can call it resilience, but if, let's say, it's a city of like, you know, sort of 20 million people, 15 million of those people, if they did not go out to work for 3 days, they'll have nothing to eat.
Right.
So I don't know if it's resilience or if it's something that they have to do because there's like no other option left. And the other thing is that maybe it comes from kind of living through this kind of hell for a very long time. The people develop a sense of humor. Mm-hmm. So people are, I don't know if it's resilience or if it's just like, you know, sort of you just laugh at whatever is happening mm-hmm. around you. I don't know if any of you was monitoring it or not. In the build-up to India-Pakistan war, the last war, we're not probably calling it war or whatever it was, that we did throw missiles and we did kind of, you know, flew fighter jets. But in the build-up to it, you should have seen the kind of jokes being cracked, mostly from Pakistan side. So I don't know, there's still a dispute who won that war. But Pakistan definitely won the meme war. Pakistanis were giving directions to Indian tanks that this is this road you should avoid. And when somebody comes to, like, you know, snatch your mobile phone to do this. So yeah, I think people learn to kind of laugh at themselves, at their situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I didn't mean to romanticize the situation or to make it better than it is. And of course, I talk to people, for instance, in Karachi, I know the Gizri flyover that takes the rich to their big mansions, but underneath the Gizri flyover, there are the daily laborers, and they are exactly the people that you are describing, the painters, the plumbers, who are just trying to make ends meet. But when I meet them and talk to them, I always feel that they are, this cannot be the most dangerous country in the world, as is often described, because these people, they carry on, and they are not open to extremism.
It's just lazy journalistic description, like the 10 most beautiful places in the world, like the 10 kind of, you know, I don't know, cheapest destinations. So I think it's a sort of a lazy description of kind of, you know, so would we say, like, for example, if I was a parent and raising my son in America, would I think that American high schools are the most dangerous places on this earth? I would say that. I know friends who've kind of left America as soon as their kids went to high school, right? So they kind of, you know, because that is like, you know, because you can sort of guarantee, you can mark on the calendar that before this month is out, some kid will kill some poor other kids, like, you know. So these descriptions kind of we use to just describe kind of, you know, sort of random people that we know little about. I think that's, yeah. That's
we use those stereotypes to make the world easier for us to assess.
Yeah, and to kind of, get people reading us. So I'm going to tell you about the most dangerous place in the world. In some ways, it is. I think it is the most dangerous place on earth for women. They are kind of, sort of, that is kind of on record. That happens. So yeah, there's no kind of explaining it away in headlines. That's why one gives up that and goes and writes novels.
You switch between worlds. You share your time, or you told me just before we went here on stage, it's not really sharing. You spend more time in London in the last couple of years than in Karachi, but you go back and forth. So you have an observation from both worlds. How often do you find yourself in a position where you are supposed to defend or justify Pakistan or Islam, and you feel like, oh, why me again?
Why me? No, no, it's not me. So that has never occurred to me that why me? It's not my duty. It's sort of, Pakistan has a foreign office and they have their ambassadors and diplomats. It's their job, and they do it. I think sometimes they do it well, and sometimes not that well. And you have Islamic scholars, and they can defend Islam. I sort of no, that hasn't occurred to me. Yes, sometimes there are sort of expectations that you'll sit down with somebody and within half an hour. I'll tell them everything that I know about, sort of Pakistan, and let alone Pakistan. If I gave an opinion about my community in Karachi, for example, where I live, I think there will be two people in my own household, my son sitting there, who will kind of vehemently disagree with me that this is not the truth. So I don't think I have, like, sort of authentic opinions, or it is my duty to defend Pakistan or to explain Pakistan. I'm a working journalist. Sometimes, somebody asks my opinion, and we say, how much will you pay? And then I give that opinion, because that's what I do for a living. Right. And sometimes I don't want to give opinions, and I sit down for years and years and years, and I think I'm going to make up, like, sort of my own world, and I write a novel. Mm-hmm. So that's what I do. I don't really have taken it upon myself to explain sort of how this country of, like, sort of 250 million people works, or if a 1400-year-old religion which is practiced by I don't know how many billion people in how many different ways, that I have to sit somewhere and defend it. I think sort of things as old as, it's like me, sitting here expecting you to explain Europe to me, or Christianity, or whatever else you believe in. I won't even ask you to explain Freud to me, because then we could be here. So yeah, no, I don't think that is my duty.
Do you see it as your duty to sort of balance misconceptions then? Because I guess questions when it comes to Pakistan are always sort of heading in the same directions, are they not?
I mean, if it's a reasonable misconception, I can try and sort of correct it, or kind of say that, oh, okay, maybe there's another way of looking at things. But sometimes misconceptions are, like, so bizarre that it's kind of better to walk away than trying to sort of correct somebody, or just tell somebody that they should just go back and read some books, maybe, that can help, that has helped people in the past. So that is not such a bad idea, but I don't not take it upon myself that I should be, I should be explaining Pakistan or my religion or even my own community to the world.
We were briefly touching upon the fact that you are from a village. Your father was a farmer. You were telling me once that in your heart you are still the peasant's boy. You still feel like a peasant's boy, and you adapted to the norms of the big city, but that you sometimes still feel like an outsider. Could you explain that notion, that feeling a little bit more? What makes you an outsider in the big city?
I think we'll again have to read more Freud and less and read less newspaper to understand that notion. But I think it is true in the sense when you grow up in a community where life kind of happens at a certain pace. You know, I can romanticize it all I want, but basically for a person, a boy growing up in that kind of milieu, it's a very boring place. Because what do? You sow the seeds and nothing happens, you know. Sort of for weeks and months, nothing happens. You water it, you till it, and kind of, you know, and there's a certain rhythm to life. And then you end up in a city where life is completely different, the pace is completely different. But you still retain some of that sort of what you call sort of the sense of being an outsider, that you've come from somewhere else, where values were different, where people sort of people communicated to each other in kind of in a different, not just language, but in a different idiom. So ultimately, and it's happened to a lot of people where urbanization has happened, like, you know, sort of within one generation. That suddenly you were like peasants, and now suddenly, like, you know, sort of you are these people who live in apartments in city and don't know who your neighbors are. So you kind of end up with that personality, that where you have longing for that life that you once had, but then you remind yourself that you actually left it because it was very boring. So you sort of develop this sadness of this person who's lost something which doesn't exist anymore. So I think it's again, I'll go back and read more Freud, and next time we talk, I'll have like a more,
we'll have an evening on Freud, I promise.
more coherent answer to that.
But was the boredom that you were describing, was that one of the driving forces for you to sign up with the Pakistani Air Force?
Yeah, most definitely. As I said, I was like growing up in a village. Life was kind of, you know, sort of very boring because we did not have YouTube Shorts back then, and we did not have you know, even cable TV, I think. So you saw like an ad in a newspaper which looked very glamorous, and you said, and you wanted to. It's a very ancient story. A boy wants to run away from a village. Like, you know, people used to join the Navy or go run away with the circus. So it's a story that has happened like across various cultures. So it was that kind of story, and you said, oh, this looks like freedom. This looks like a very glamorous life. And nobody was there to tell you that actually joining the army is not freedom. It is the opposite of freedom. So I realized that...
They don't tell you that when you register?
After you walk in those gates, and those gates shut behind you, then you realize before that, because you haven't had that kind of community where kind of you know what life is like. So your aim is to kind of get away, run away, and then you sort of run away from like what seemed like a small jail to a big proper jail with big gates and lights out times and kind of, you know, proper rules and kind of big boots.
But the observations you made there always sort of come up in your novels. So it was a tremendous part of your life, right? I mean, it was something that did shape you. It was not just horrible and you wanted to leave.
Yeah. Listen, everybody, when you look at your teen years, you find like, you know, sort of really, really good bits, probably the best bits of your life in there. And my best bits happened because back then, and I think it's still true, Pakistan, Air Force and Army, they used to have like the best libraries in the country, like really the best ones. Even books which were banned like for civilians, were there in those libraries. And the fun fact is that you do not join the army to read books. That is not the purpose of your, that's not the purpose that you wear uniform. And I kind of got sidetracked. I discovered the library. And it was also that when you were bunking a class or an activity, that was the last place that somebody was going to go and look for you. So it was like the best hiding. That was the best hiding place. So through books, like everybody who reads books, you kind of discover, you know, sort of completely and absolutely new world. So even in that confined kind of world, sort of full of these rules and regulations, you kind of read books, and you kind of every day you escape into a new world. So that was the fun part, I think. Okay.
And that was the initiation process for your career as a writer, then, of like getting exposed to all those books?
Must have been. It's like again, it's like a very common story that you read enough books, and one day you get this idea into your head that maybe I can do this too. You know, it's a very common disease. I'm sure some of you have kind of felt it. You read a really good book and you think, oh, one day I am going to do this. So yeah, so I fell like, you know, for the same kind of trap.
But I think you should follow up with a full disclosure, because you also told me, for instance, for Red Birds, you spent 7 years of writing, and that it's sometimes a really, really painful process. Most of the time you said it was painful. And then there's this lightning struck at you, and you can sort of, from that idea, you can use it for months.
I think like every journalist, you got it wrong. You got it the other way.
Yeah.
So I
play my role.
I was trying to explain my process, which is always very difficult to do. So I'll try it again. So when you get an idea for a book, for a novel, one day suddenly there is lightning, that you can see the whole story, like a whole structure of a magnificent building. But you see it only for like a fraction of a second, in that lightning moment. And it is beautiful, and it's the most perfect thing in the world. And then your job as a writer is to recreate it on paper. And it never looks so beautiful. It never looks so perfect. And it's kind of torturous to kind of read your own stuff and say, but this is not what it looked like in that moment. So then you kind of struggle and try and come as close to that vision or that foolish idea which you thought was the most brilliant idea in the world that you had one day. So I think trying to recapture that is always a struggle.
I was close but wrong. Yes,
yeah.
I admit. So.
Yes, yeah.
Thanks for correcting that. You said also that if fiction is sort of a good, of course, obviously it's a great way to escape from reality, and that the future sort of belongs to fiction. Those are your words. I still try to make sense of them up to this day, and now I have the chance to ask you again. What do you mean?
If it didn't make sense then, it's not going to make sense now. I have no idea what I was thinking. I think what happens is that I work as a journalist as well. You know, sort of, I used to report less and less now, and you kind of write about like current events and stuff. And as we kind of talked about it earlier, it gets very depressing. You know, sort of most of whatever is happening around us is actually very, very depressing. You can just turn on your phone like any given time of the day, and you can look at burning babies, you can look at starving babies, you can look at other babies who are trying to save them, you can look at people saying that this is so foolish, trying to save them. Everybody will tell you there are like 3 sides of the story and you're only talking about one. So it can all get like, you know, sort of too much. So you say, oh, I'm a novelist as well. So I'll sit in my corner and I will create my own world. So that's what I meant, and that's why you kind of go and spend years and years and years trying to build your own world where you're the master. You can kill anybody when you like. You can make them fall in love. You can make them leave. You can make them come back. So I think maybe I was talking about my future, that my future is in fiction. And I keep telling myself that, but sort of you stick with your fiction for long enough, that can also become a bit much, and then you want to sort of run to the real world and say that, oh, okay, maybe I can make a difference here.
Right.
So you kind of, it's like that, like people who live in two places, so they're always going to miss the place that they are not in. For example, I live in Karachi. When I'm in Karachi, I'll miss London, and when I'm in London, I'll miss Karachi. And I think
it's Karachi do you miss then? The sound, the smell, the vibrancy of the city that is, goes way beyond even London?
I miss my friends, obviously, in the family, and I live close to the sea, so I miss that stench of rotting fish in the evening. That's
beautiful.
So there's yeah. So I miss my kind of water bootleggers. I kind of because so those kinds of things. Yeah.
You're saying that on the one hand you can create your own world, your own niche with the fiction. And I was going to ask you if this is what keeps you sane, but then you're also saying that it sometimes maybe it takes.
You are giving me a certificate of sanity, That's no.
I shouldn't, I guess.
No, thank you.
No, I didn't mean it.
I'll say I got it from Vienna.
I can give you a Freud
authentic,
stamp then as well. No, I didn't mean it that in a sense of maybe sanity wasn't the right word, but maybe sort of creating your own world to escape like from the harsh realities that you were describing earlier. I think that's more what I meant,
Yeah, I've tried it. And I did try like a couple of times. I thought, what is this? What is wrong? Why can't I write a happy novel? Like in which nothing bad happens? Surely there are people who've lived happy, shiny lives. Nothing bad happens to them. So I have tried seriously, and by the time I get to page 7, something really bad happens. Something like somebody goes missing, somebody gets killed, and somebody kind of so yeah, it is still kind of the plan that one day I'll be able to write a very happy novel where people keep getting happier and happier as they turn the page. It hasn't happened so far, but one lives in hope.
Let's turn before we will open up to the public here for questions. Let's turn to the harsh reality, and that is that the West left Pakistan's neighboring country Afghanistan 4 years ago in chaos. Pakistan is on the forefront still. Left alone with that problem. The Taliban are running Afghanistan. There's also a very serious challenge to the Pakistani government. Is that, how dire would you describe the situation now that the West is gone? Is that better for the region or is it worse?
Like, why did West leave though, by the way?
You want an answer?
Yeah.
They had seen it coming for a long time that they were failing, and then they took they set a date, and they handed.
Why had they gone there in the first place?
Are we switching roles now?
Yeah, no, you're a journalist. You've covered that conflict, so it's like two journalists talking. So I want to understand.
Sure,
why did they go there?
Well, I mean, if we take it from the European perspective, it was to be good allies with the Americans.
Okay, and
only from the European perspective.
Yeah. So what we were told was that West cares about women and children, basically, and women and children are kind of sort of under threat, under Taliban, which was true, still are, as you probably know. Women can't go to schools, or girls can't go to schools or universities, right? So the world's kind of biggest military powers, most sophisticated nations with sort of brilliant journalists kind of covering the story. They go into this thing, and then after so many years, what do they say? They say, hell with these women and children, we're going home, right? Basically,
right.
That's what happened. So they decided on this moral mission for themselves because they were sitting kind of far, far away, right? Pakistan did not have that choice. Pakistan has been kind of, we are neighbors and have been like for centuries and will be forever. And to give you so if you say that West was hypocritical in this, I think Pakistani military regimes which dealt with Taliban, they were also doing that. They were saying, oh, Taliban are our brothers, right? So with one hand, you're protecting that brother, and with the other hand, you're telling the American Europeans, come and bomb them. So whatever Taliban ideology might be, but they didn't see it happening all around them. So I think there was a mistrust. And finally, when they won their freedom, which they did, you might agree with them or disagree with them, they did manage to drive out, sort of this massive army from their country and took over. So when people win these kind of wars, they get these notions that, okay, now that Afghanistan is free from the clutches of Western evils or whatever they believed in, so now I think some of them think that, oh, we will bring the same freedom to our Pakistani brothers as well. So I think those notions exist, and that is causing troubles with Pakistan, and it is kind of tragic that, so if you've been calling them brothers for all these 30, 40 years, since I've kind of since I went to school, this Afghan conflict has been going on. Did not start in 2001, by the way. So before that, we had Mujahideen, who were supposed to be kind of defeat communism and liberate the rest of the world, which they apparently did. Yeah. So now we've kind of been in this phase, and now I just hope that they will kind of protect their freedoms, and they will let Pakistan be, and that whole notion of that somehow Pakistan can subjugate Afghanistan and have this ferocious little brother in the neighborhood that they can use at their will. I think that does not exist anymore. I don't think anybody kind of even sort of the most foolish of the Pakistani policymakers believe that, or I hope so.
That's a hope that you were formulating. That's a great way to end our conversation. Thank you very much, Mr. Mohammed Hanif.
Thank you. And I know I forgot to say something which before we end, I was told when you were talking about India and Pakistan, somebody told me before the thing that I must say this, that like every mother tells their son that sharing is caring, and maybe Pakistan and India should learn that lesson. But most sons actually don't, but let's see.